God gave man a brain and a penis. And only enough blood to run one at a time. Robin Williams. What are some real-life examples of this? I was living in a house share with a couple of mates back in uni, and my door was right next to the front door. While my mates were out, my girlfriend came over and decided to surprise me with a blowjob while I was gaming. A few minutes into it, we hear the keys in the front door and realized she'd left my bedroom door wide open. In a sudden panic and a very blood-deprived brain, I picked up a textbook and hurled it at the door. My aim was, in my mind, the book would hit the door and close it. This did not happen. It merely made a very loud bang. My girlfriend stops and stares at me like I'm a moron, and my housemates come into my room to see what the noise was. But wait, it gets worse. Helen of Sparta, the Spartan queen, eloped with Paris, some trust fund rich kid from Troy, who was tagging along a diplomatic mission from Troy to Sparta. Her husband Menelaus, the king of freakin' Sparta, was understandably enraged, and he pulled all the favors in building a coalition that ended up erasing Troy off the face of the earth. But Helen almost caused another city to get erased before that, and that city is Athens. Well, no, to be fair, she didn't cause it, it was a bunch of guys who almost did, fighting over / for her. Remember Theseus? Hero and awesome guy, right? Killed the Minotaur. He became king of Athens because that's how awesome he was. And then he got older and turned rotten. He kidnapped Helen when she was very young, perhaps a preteen. Castor and Pollux, the twins, or the Gemini as in the constellation, were Helen's brothers. They raised a huge army and marched on Athens, vowing to tear down every building in search for Helen. On the outskirts of the city they met a guy named Academos, who begged the Gemini to not destroy the city. He was going to tell them where Theseus was hiding Helen, in exchange for the twins not razing the city. They agreed, Helen was saved, and Athens was spared destruction. Academos was gifted a piece of land by the city council for his deeds, and the land eventually became a sort of park or grove planted with olive trees. Sort of lost a best friend over that. My best friend from high school found and married a girl that my wife and I loved. We became the classic double date foursome. Apart from that though, she was what you'd consider the dream girl for a lot of men. She liked sport, she liked nerdy stuff, she was into comics, she didn't play video games but was happy to sit and watch her husband play video games with a story. So fast forward a few years, they have 2 kids. We have 2 kids. Her mum died a few months before their second was born, so she was struggling a bit. Anyone could understand why she'd be having a hard time. Her husband, my friend, was working later and later, and once when we met up at sport he was telling me about going out clubbing on the town with for his young female colleague's birthday. Sounds sus. I'm sure his wife was okay with it because she always was, but I would never even think about doing it with an infant and a toddler at home. So yeah, a few months later he sends a sneaky group chat to me and our other good mate, we're separated but don't tell anybody. My wife asked his wife and yep. He was fucking a younger employee from his workplace, where he was manager, while his wife was at home with their 1-year-old kid and other toddler, grieving her dead mother. He didn't know I knew and kept up the lie for months that they'd just grown apart. I pretty much cut him out of my life after that, and my wife has flat out said the new girl is never welcome in our home. One of my students was caught with a belt around his neck by his parents. His father immediately realized what is going on since his pants were down. The mother, confused, thought he is trying to commit suicide, ignoring the pants completely and focusing on the blue face. In the conservative country of Singapore, and conservative ethnicity of Indians, the situation led to quite a bit of hurt. Mother was confused and deeply hurt that dad is showing no concern for suicidal son. Son leveraged the suicide angle and let go of his studies completely. He was showered with love by the mother. I recommended couples counseling. Psychologists sorted it out in 1 week. Things were back to normal next time the kid came, and we never talked about it again. Ugh, I'll do you one better. I went to the store to get some stuff for dinner, and the checkout girl was super cute. I went through the store and deliberately purchased ingredients for a nice, involved meal hoping she would ask about it. I finally go to check out through her line, and she asks what I'm making. It worked. She said I should bring her some, and told me what time she got off. I said good to know, and left. You know, like a serial killer. This was only a few months ago, but it's one of those things you know you'll never forget, and every now and then when you're trying to sleep your brain reminds you of what a goddamned stumbling buffoon you were. I should mention, this isn't exactly the kind of thing that happens to me on a yearly basis. Whale fucking. No joke. Each year, on February 1st, in the Molokai Channel, a few men compete in the world's only whale fucking contest. Humpback whales are easy to fuck for a second or less. World record, 31 seconds. I competed once. Almost got my ribs crushed. Stick with ostriches. Also John McAfee, June 23, 2018. Followed with this gem on December 31, 2018 after months of arguing over animal sexual consent after his whale tweet. Enough of the whale fucking is non-consensual bullshit. A humpback whale weighs 70,000 pounds, is 50 feet long, can dive more than a quarter mile and can crush ships with a single swipe of its tail. If a human manages to fuck one, you damn well better believe it's consensual. This guy lived most of his life thinking with one over the other. Fun fact, in BDSM circles there is a phenomenon known as sub-drop. It refers to occasions where you go from being very aroused and into whatever you're doing, which for some folks can include normally undesirable things like degradation, denial, etc., to having a somewhat sudden lucidity about your situation accompanied by some, sometimes rather extreme, negative emotions. This kind of situation is dealt with by, firstly, going slow with whatever you're doing, not pushing too many boundaries too far at once, and aftercare, which is basically where you have nice, safe, and positive non-sexual interactions with whoever you're playing with until you feel normal again, or do something to make yourself feel good if you're alone. When I learned this as a guy, it occurred to me that sub-drop and post-nut clarity are basically the same phenomenon, although I really don't like the term post-nut clarity because what you experience in these situations is not actually clarity. It's more akin to a rapid withdrawal response. If arousal is a drug, and it does function similar to one in terms of body chemistry, then sub-drop and post-nut syndrome is what happens when you go from being flooded with arousal, to suddenly having none. And while your body balances your hormones, it can really fuck with you. If you're engaging in new sexual exploration, you're more likely to experience feelings of disgust/regret when you're done, even if what you did was perfectly normal and okay. And sometimes, you might act on those feelings of disgust/regret and then 15 minutes later wonder why you did that, e.g. if you bought a sex toy for the first time, you could freak out and throw it away after using it, but then feel like an idiot for throwing it away. Now certainly it's possible you do something in your lust-filled state that really isn't healthy, and you might need to address that. But it's important you do so with a clear head, and not right after you're done jerking off. Wait until you're feeling completely normal before thinking about if your sexual behavior was okay or you want to avoid it in future. Sometimes people really beat themselves up and feel out of control of their sexual behavior because every time they FAP or W/E they finish feeling regret and telling themselves never again, only to be tempted again and again by the same thing because they only set that boundary when they're feeling negative and so later on it doesn't seem as bad. Fact is, a lot of people have weird and sometimes extreme sexual kinks and fetishes. You can't necessarily control if you're aroused by certain things, but you can decide not to be tempted by them, if that's what you want. Just do not rely on being disgusted at yourself to do that work for you, because when you're aroused again you won't be disgusted. Alternatively, you might decide that those feelings of disgust are actually not really warranted. And similarly, telling yourself that, for example, it's actually okay if I like to put stuff in my butt occasionally when you're not feeling aroused, nor anti-aroused is a good way to mitigate those feelings of confusion/regret/disgust you might have gotten initially, and know that you truly accept your behavior and are not just a slave to your arousal. TLDR, post-nut clarity is not clarity. Arousal is an emotional upper and post-jizz is an emotional downer. Chill out and give it 15 to 30 minutes before reflecting on your fapping behavior. Then make mental assessments of your behavior, acceptance or rejection, and adjust in future as/if necessary. Master your sexy time to maximize fun and avoid the bad feels. I ran into a true moral quandary in my early 20s. I was at a bar, and started talking with this girl sitting at the bar. She was great, super funny, just a really nice lady. I asked her if she wanted to go have a drink at my place, and she said sure. She gets up, and she's got crutches. I made a stupid joke that she came prepared, 'cause she was gonna really need them after we got through with tonight. She said, I know, unless your dick can cure muscular dystrophy. And at that moment I realized she didn't have a broken leg or sprained ankle like I'd assumed. She may have even mentioned it, and I didn't hear her. I'm really hard of hearing, and it was a loud club. So now I'm like, is it discrimination to have a one-nighter with her, knowing I'll probably never call her again? Or is it discrimination not to have a one-nighter with her, knowing I'll never call her again? Okay, I can share one of these. The time I used my brain when I should have used my penis. In high school my parents were out of the house until late. At school I mentioned that my parents were going to be gone for a while to two girls I was friends with. They then asked if they could come over and hang out since my parents were gone, and I said sure, thinking it was a little weird because they'd never been to my house before, but whatever. They come over to the house and ask to see my room, and I take them to my room. They start oohing and aahing over my super normal teenage room. They take a particular interest in my bed, but I start showing them the computer I built and was super proud of. They both climbed into my bed and start telling me about how my computer is super cool and I'm so smart, but that they really like my bed, and start tickling each other and making sexual jokes. I take their comments about my computer as genuine interest in my computer, so I then proceed to play video games on it while they watch for hours until my parents come home. They look super bored the entire time just watching me play video games sitting on my bed. They're both bisexual BTW. Anyway, that is the story of the time I used my brain when I should have used my penis. I used to travel a lot for a job. One weekend I had to go to insert name of big city in North America for a job and met a coworker there who I didn't know too well. All I knew is that he was married, had 2 little kids, and was a good salesman. He was on the rise. We went to a bar and my coworker starts chatting with this very attractive woman. They're hitting it off, drinking fast and furiously, and getting very touchy-feely. She then tells us that her sister is getting married the next day and she wants my coworker to be her date. He gave me this, oh well, what can I do? Look and shrug. She grabbed his hand and they were gone. 2 days later, he's tagged all over Facebook and Instagram at this wedding. This woman had posted dozens of pictures of them slow dancing, sitting on each other's laps, laughing with her family, and looking like Romeo and Juliet madly in love. She had tagged him in every picture. Last I heard he was living in some friend's apartment basement. I was a college swimmer, not even close to the best even in my group, but I was solid. I'm tall with a long arm span, large torso, just a naturally gifted swimmer, and I was on Mexican supplements. I had like 8 beers or something on vacation in Gulf Shores with some friends. It was a storm that came, the water would be chest high and then drop to your ankles. A little girl got pulled out and I took off my shoes and shirt. Friends tried to hold me back. You will die if you go out there. I didn't care, I dove in and that was the last thing I remember. They say I made it super close back to the shore, close enough where guys pulled us both in, but all I remember is shoving this firefighter guy off me while choking and vomiting out water and trying to breathe. The girl, she didn't make it, she wasn't able to be revived. Wonder if I didn't have those 8 beers, never mattered that I dove in. Let me preface by saying I acknowledge that sexism exists, income disparity is one of many glaring examples, but it goes both ways. I feel the need to get this off my chest because it has been boiling for some time. Please stop reading now if you are not open to ideas of gender/sexual equality. I understand that this is an innocent joke and all, however, imagine the reverse, suggesting that their genitalia makes women inferior in any way is liable to get that person lynched. Yet here we see an example of reverse sexism played off as a joke. Please give me a moment to explain. If this were a joke about women's mental capacity and their genitalia, the post and the OP would have been murdered. Feminism, perhaps it would have been better named as equalism? The idea of sexual/gender equality is definitely something to be pursued, but we need to see both sides of the issue. Men are portrayed as brute dumbos and women as emotional train wrecks. No. We are humans, we can be both regardless of our gender. It is a disservice to all genders/sexes to not recognize this. I was on my computer one day after work, my girlfriend at the time and I were living together. He had this mega desk of a battle station and I was zoning out. She came home early. She started to get undressed in a normal way, not really trying to make it sexy so she could get ready for work. Her and I were having a convo about our days and I turned around not realizing she had been down to just her panties, not even sexy panties, just normal black briefs, and I was talking about dinner and mid-sentence I just said books and apparently stared for about 2 minutes, mouth slightly agape. I had been seeing this woman a full year and we had been sleeping together for a time prior. I had forgotten what I had been talking about in those moments she was talking, but I had completely been focused elsewhere. A friend of mine from work was dating a woman who was constantly cheating on him, mistreating him, and just being a generally abusive person towards him. Obviously I don't have the full story, so who knows what it was like for both parties, but he said that the second was great and he was very attracted to her. He was also starting to date another woman while they were on a break and he told me that they both had the same type of humor, they both had the same interests and she seemed like a genuinely good person. He was very torn between the two as they both had their positives and negatives. After weeks of him fretting over what to do, he eventually asked me, what the fuck do I do? One person is very sexy but the other is just so great and everything I look for in a partner. And I just said to him, you're thinking with your dickhead and not your real head, man. You clearly have good chemistry with this other person, you should dump the abusive person and go full time with the other, it's simple. He went wide-eyed and just said, holy fuck man, that put that in perspective. You're totally right. The two of them are now married, have 2 kids and operate a business that sells second-hand clothes where 50% of the proceeds go towards a local women's shelter. A 16-year-old boy died after masturbating 42 times without stopping in Rubiato town, in Goiás region, Brazil. His mother told a local newspaper that she already knew about his son's addiction and that she planned to see the doctor, but the decision came too late. The young man began to masturbate at midnight and spent the whole night to compulsively touch himself. At school, his classmates commented on the boy's problem and some said he asked them to connect to the webcam for being observed. They further said that his attraction to women was extreme, he was attracted to all kind of women, regardless of texture, physics, color, and age. In his room a great amount of pornography was found, including photographs and videos of nude women that were saved on his PC. First off, the phrase "the decision came too late" was a terrible choice of words. Second, we can only assume that this young man died from lack of food or water because to jizz 42 times would take a long time. RIP young man. https://thebookhouston.com/8586872/ Brazilian teenager dies after masturbating 42 times without stopping. I recently witnessed a car accident. Guy demolished his car and I helped get his service dog out but had to run, so I handed him off to other bystanders and gave him my number in case the insurance company needed to speak to me. No other cars were involved and it appears his car malfunctioned. He texted me, while standing there, "Hi Skittles for brains, this is M." A few days later I get a hello. I didn't answer, but the next day I answered back that I hope he was okay. He said he was in a car accident and wanted to know who I was. Dealing with people who had been in accidents with concussions before, I was pretty understanding. Explained who I was. He answered back that his car won't be covered by insurance and that he wished he hadn't tried to stop by the bank on the way to his parents' house. He then proceeded to ask me if I was single. Once I told him I was married, he then asked if I knew anyone single with a head on their shoulders and that he would cut his hair if they were worth it. I muted him.